Welcome to 𝐂𝐴 Unscripted. A few months ago, I wrote an article on my community posts, the section of my YouTube channel, the community post section. It was titled, "The Wealth Candace Owens Doesn't Talk About." I recently reposted that article on the 11th of June, and I'll leave a link to it in the description below for those who would like to read it. In saying that, I'd like to continue highlighting what I've come across regarding Candace Owens and what I did on the 10th of June after spending more time researching her work, her public commentary and influence. I filmed a video titled "Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens, Why Millions Are Listening to Them," and my Christian perspective on that. I'll also link that below to this video. The reality is that Candace has become one of the most influential voices in alternative media today. We all know that. Millions of people trust her, they listen to her, and they increasingly look to her for guidance on things like politics, culture, faith, history, and world events. Candace presents herself as an independent thinker and an independent channel, standing apart from mainstream narratives, right? Yet, I found myself asking deeper questions. It was all too suspicious for me because I simply don't believe the narrative Candace presents about not being wealthy or not being part of the elite or somehow operating without significant influence behind her. Someone with the level of exposure, reach, protection, and access that Candace enjoys isn't operating in a vacuum, not at all. On the contrary, she's been amplified to a global audience, whether people agree with her or not, and allow me to assure you viewers, that kind of platform doesn't happen by accident. It requires serious, powerful connections, backing and influential support operating behind the scenes. The fact that she hasn't been silenced or raises a huge flag to me, especially regarding the topics that will have anyone literally destroyed. That's one of the reasons why I'm continuing this investigation, because I don't believe the public image being presented fully aligns with the reality of the power and influence also backing Candace has. The image Candace presents as if attempting to reflect she's one of us is downright not reality. My purpose isn't to attack Candace Owens, nor is it to diminish the work she has done. Rather, my purpose is to carefully examine the growing gap between the image being presented and the evidence available, which shows the contrary. The more I've researched Owens, the more I found myself questioning whether Candace is truly as independent as she claims to be. Therefore, with that foundation laid, I'm going to turn my attention and yours to the question that brought me here in the first place. Is Candace Owens really independent? That's the question, dear Watson. This is a question I have wrestled with for quite a while and continue to. And after more research, watching a recent presentation about Candace as well, which attempted to dismantle the image of Candace Owens as an independent media personality, it appeared to me I was absolutely on the right track, and I wasn't the only one thinking this. Now, before anyone goes crazy on me, this isn't an attack on Candace Owens. It also is not a defense of her. What interests me is the rhetoric and questions of independence itself that I have. We're living in a time where trust in mainstream media has collapsed. We get that. People no longer trust the talking heads. They don't trust corporate media or politicians, and I'm right there with them. It's totally understandable. Today, millions have literally migrated towards podcasters, influencers, commentators, independent journalists, and alternative media personalities. Absolutely, we all get that. My question is, because I'm forever questioning whether they're truly independent or whether we've been simply exchanged one form of influence for another. Allow me to explain. As I continued my research, I realized I wasn't the only person asking these questions, as I shared before. Others were noticing the same contradictions and inconsistencies that had caught my attention. Throughout my research, I came across one particular video that raised many of the same concerns. I have seen many videos. I'd already been considering whether Candace Owens is truly the independent outsider she presents and claims herself to be. So what stood out to me is that Candace routinely discusses subjects many actually would consider untouchable. Viewers, she speaks about powerful people, powerful institutions, political interests, lobbying groups, and intelligent agencies, also media organizations, and narratives that often people and podcasters are reluctant to challenge, if they would even dare to challenge at all. However, despite doing so, her platform continues to grow and expand. She also remains highly visible and extremely protective. That's the key. How is she extremely protective? Whether people agree with her conclusions or not, that level of exposure, influence, and access and resilience doesn't simply appear out of nowhere. It doesn't. Rather, it raises questions, many questions for me, about who stands behind her, what networks support her, and how someone discussing issues that many consider off limits continue to operate, being untouched or unsilenced. Throughout Candace's career, from Brexit to Turning Point USA to the Daily Wire and her own media operation, she's been surrounded by wealthy donors, by influential political figures, powerful institutions, and significant backing, who knew Candace has a presence and purpose to her, especially her communication skills. They're brilliant, and people want to catch on to that. One of the first names I came across, and one that certainly isn't presented to audiences when Candace speaks about being an outsider, was 𝐂𝐴𝐸 Perlmutter. Now, who exactly is 𝐂𝐴𝐸 Perlmutter? He's not only merely a local donor or a small business owner, quite the contrary, or someone operating on the fringes of influence. 𝐂𝐴𝐸 is the former chairman and chief executive of Marvel Entertainment, the man who helped oversee one of the most powerful entertainment brands in the world before its acquisition by Disney. 𝐂𝐴𝐸 is a billionaire with deep connections throughout corporate America, not to mention political circles, investment networks, and conservative fundraising operations. when one of the first names connected to the early support and promotion of Brexit, Candace Owens highly publicised this movement, encouraging Black Americans to leave the Democrat Party, is actually a billionaire power broker from the upper levels of American businesses and politics. It absolutely challenges the Candace narrative that this was simply a grassroots movement built by an ordinary person. I'm no longer talking about outsiders operating from the margins. This is an individual with extraordinary wealth, influence, and political access and institutional reach. And as much as Candace tries to say she's anti-establishment, Perlmutter isn't anti-establishment at all. His direct influence within the establishment. In fact, it's actually establishment influence operated at one of the highest levels, and it raises important questions about how independent the movement of Brexit really was from the beginning. Now, moving on to Candace at Turning Point USA and the financial networks that have historically supported conservative activism and media, again, this only reinforces a thought I've had for quite some time, dear viewers, namely that Candace Owens is far removed from the image she presents of being just one of us outside the elite circles and somehow disconnected from powerful interests. I don't think so. The evidence suggests something very different. Candace's rise doesn't appear to have been entirely grassroots, not at all. Along the way, she has benefited from the support of major donors, influential political figures, powerful financial interests, and networks that most ordinary people would never have access to. That's not to say she hasn't worked hard or built an audience, we'll give her that. But it does raise an important question. How does someone consistently challenge powerful institutions, speak on these controversial subjects, expand their platforms globally, and continue gaining influence while remaining largely protected from the kinds of dangerous consequences others would often face doing the same thing? The more research I do, the more difficult it becomes to accept the narrative that Candace is simply an independent outsider fighting alone. Rather, the evidence, as I've said so many times right here, points to someone operating with access to significant influence, powerful connections, and support from individuals positioned within the highest levels of business and of politics, of media and wealth, that is sitting behind the scenes with Candace Owens. And as I shared in my article, the wealth Candace doesn't talk about, the originally published several months ago and reposted on the 11th of June, my attention wasn't focused on Candace per se and her public statements as much as the extraordinary wealth and influence surrounding her through her husband, George Farmer. George Farmer doesn't come from ordinary means, dear viewers, not at all. George comes from generational wealth, inherited privilege, and political access. His family connections were built over decades and generations. His father, Lord Michael Farmer, is a prominent figure within British business and political circles, and the farmer family's wealth extends far beyond personal income into a broader structure of influence, investments, and establishment connections. It was this reality that first caused me to question the image of Candace as an outsider operating independently of elite interests. My goodness. The farmer family is, it's difficult to reconcile the public narrative with the level of wealth, access, influence, and protection surrounding Candace Owens and how she talks about her husband. These observations formed the basis of my article before I came across others raising the same questions and thoughts. Therefore, the image Candace Owens as a lone outsider battling powerful institutions began to unravel for me. George Farmer isn't a man who emerged from obscurity. They're very well known in Europe. Their family connections and financial background are of public record. One thing I did find strange is you could hardly find anything about George's mother. Sponsorships, investors, board members, business relations, and corporate structures are all part and parcel of the Farmer family. We must ask then, if Candace isn't as independent as she presents herself to be, at least in my opinion, and if she's connected through her husband to a family possessing such substantial generational wealth, influence, political access and power, then what's really going on here, viewers? What's going on? That's the question I find myself pondering on. Candace positions herself as someone challenging these elites, exposing these powerful interests and pulling back the curtain on influence operating behind the elite scenes. Yet, as outlined in my article and so many times now here on this video, she's also connected to circles of extraordinary wealth and influence through the Farmer family. Therefore, when Candace speaks about confronting elites, my question becomes, which elites, Candace? Do tell. You know George Farmer comes from a very elite family. You know that, built over generations. We're talking generational wealth, and that is certainly elite. Candace's story isn't a story of someone operating without connections or support. Her story involves powerful networks, established relationships, and access to spheres of influence that most ordinary people, or even those that are not ordinary, will never encounter. If Candace has taken on some of the most powerful people worldwide, and those in media, politics, finance and culture, who's helping, what my question is, who's helping her make that possible? Who's standing behind the platform, the reach, the protection for her, and the influence for her and her family? What interests are aligned with her rise and why? What's the agenda? This is what I'm looking at. What's the agenda? These are questions that I'll continue to ask throughout my research if I continue researching Candace, but I do want to raise awareness about this. And the harder it becomes to accept this story of Candace, that she's simply a lone voice fighting against the establishment. The reality appears far removed, far more in depth and more dynamic than Candace presents as the mum in the basement and the wife making a sandwich. I don't buy it. And the prominent issue here is whether audiences have surrendered their ability to critically think, and somehow I don't think they are critically thinking. I'm finding myself less interested in Owens specifically and more interested in the broader pattern emerging, the agenda. and looking deeper into that. What is the agenda that's opposing the current agenda that we have on the world stage of, the elites, the Zionists, the globalists? That's what I'm emerging into and have been for months. Thinking, looking into what are the alternative networks of influence of the elites? Who are they? What is their objective? And if that's the case, what are they trying to destroy to raise up? What interests are being advanced and by whom? And more importantly, who benefits from the narratives being promoted by Candace Owens? These, dear viewers, are the questions that increasingly occupy my attention, not Candace on her own, not her public face, the front woman of the show. It's who's behind the scenes in her platform and what are they trying to achieve, what vision is being advanced, what movement is currently being built, who's been gathering, mobilizing and influencing through it all while Candace is the front woman, the sandwich maker, the woman, the mother in the basement. That exists. That's what I would love you guys to start thinking critically about. Because the question is, who holds it? What are they using it for and to what end? That's what I'm looking to. And I do not believe for one moment that Candace Owens is not an elite. She is an elite. And she has so much blooming backing. As I would say in my everyday life, because I make up a lot of words, I might get some flags for this, what the 𝐂𝐚𝐞 is going on. Because I will never swear, I hate swearing, never have sworn, I just don't like it. So what the 𝐂𝐚𝐞 is going on, that's what I want to do, raise more awareness so that people are able to look into the facts for themselves, to understand this is not paintbrushed as Candace is suggesting and portraying, and simply do not accept what is being said. Question, seek the truth wherever it leads. To my new subscribers, I'm genuinely thrilled to have you here and incredibly grateful for your support, encouragement and comments, and also those who have been sharing this work. I also want to thank those of you who kindly pointed out that my audio volume has been low in some of my videos, if not all of them. I completely understand the frustration, and please believe me when I say I'm truly sorry about that. I'm currently in the process of sourcing some studio equipment, lighting, microphone and sound equipment, so hopefully that won't be too far away. At the moment, I'm just a podcaster on the couch with a little puppy behind her, little Nina, and I hope to bring you a more professional look. This is why I'm horizontal. I am setting up, vertical, not horizontal. I am setting up hopefully where I will be horizontal, although I prefer vertical. I really do. I would go vertical any day, but it seems it's not the go. And I've never been one to go for the trends. I've always gone against the grain. But that's not what this is about. Keep questioning. Keep thinking critically. Don't allow these, thoughts, these narratives, these stories to keep you away from thinking. As Candace says and promotes about Charlie, keep asking questions. And that's what I do, and I'll continue to do, because I'm a very suspicious person, dear viewers. I am so suspicious. Thank you again. Thank you for taking the time to watch. Until the next time, take care. Au revoir.